Alright, got something special for you guys. First low-level model on the channel that I think I've done in a while. Grizzly bear for D&D campaign. Got a nice little frosty cliffside we're going to be working on. So our base color through the airbrush is going to be mahogany brown. If you don't have an airbrush, you can brush this on, no worries. Right? So this is just a light coat through the airbrush. If you're new to using an airbrush, don't sketch. Your sketchiness is in your trigger finger, so practice on little small agitations of the trigger with your finger. Now, the reason we're starting with a mahogany brown is grizzly bears are pretty red. They got a lot of red tone in them, and we want our base color to represent them. We are going to work up these colors as we go, and might even add some washes as well. Don't rush covering your model with an airbrush. You're already saving time by having an airbrush. And you're going to get a nice, thin, even base coat if you take your time. I'm going to finish this up, and then we'll move on to the next step. Alright, just finished that coat of the mahogany brown. We're moving on to chocolate brown. This will go toward the ends of the legs, ends of the hands, up around the head, and on the shoulders. And yes, I have a reference that I am using. So this chocolate brown is just going to naturalize, give a little bit more of a neutral brown tone to him. The legs and arms will fade to a very dark fur. So we want to make sure that we go kind of neutral, have that shift in tone happening, which gives this guy some visual interest. If you don't have a airbrush, if you haven't been painting miniatures for long, you can also dry brush this. So for dry brushing, I recommend these makeup brushes, especially large ones for models like this, where you can dry brush in your layers of new colors. The airbrush is just a quick way to get things done. And if you're going to be painting a lot of miniatures, I do suggest investing in one. I'm not trying to sell you an airbrush. I just think that the savings in time for a couple $100 over the lifetime of the use of the airbrush will be way more beneficial than just hand painting even this base coat. This base coat would have taken 20 minutes to put on. It took me 2. Alright, order of colors used: the mahogany brown, chocolate brown from Model Color, light brown from Model Air. We're on the Model Air light brown step. So this is on the chest, almost like a ridge down the back, and then top of the head, ears. Right. So chest, it's almost like their pecs are sort of accented. Chest muscles, they have like a little bit down below in the hello zone. Let's lighten up the ears. Mr. Yogi is starting to get some character. So now you have all 3 of these colors sort of interacting with each other super nicely. Now we need to darken some things up. So I'm going to grab some more paint. And that paint is the Game Ink Skin Wash. So we need a little bit of that redness added back into our light brown areas, because grizzlies have a little bit of an orangey color. We're going to hit this from just almost like a zenithal direction and feather it into the sides here. Top of the head, around the ears. We're not trying to blow out our light brown. We're just trying to give it an orange tint toward the edges. A little bit of fade. Get right here in the cheeks just a little bit more. Under the eyes. Hitting those ears. Now he's looking nice and mean. Last color for the airbrush on the bear will be this Bombay Black India ink. You can use FW ink. It's another acrylic ink that is an India ink and we're going to hit real lightly the ends of all of the limbs, darken them up. He's been getting dirty, his fur's been getting stained, running around in the icy north. Getting real grizzly like. Now we got some really good fur textures going on. And then the muzzle. Basically all the killing tools on a grizzly. Get that darker fade to him. Alright, looking good. For the inside of the mouth and the pads of the paws, we're going to take Warlord Purple, Black, and Royal Purple. Now, the reason we're adding black is to desaturate these colors. We don't want them super colorful in that sense. You can see that these are very vibrant colors. And anything that's black, white, or brown will desaturate your colors. Give them a little bit more of a natural look instead of a fantasy look. I'm going to start pretty dark here with these colors. And it's okay to mix your colors, right? You don't have to go out and buy 100 colors, you know. If it's something you want to do, it's something that's more comfortable for you, feel free. But if it's one of those budget things, like I know I and a lot of other people are subject to, then go ahead, start learning how to mix. We're just hitting around the outside of the mouth a little bit, show that exposed skin inside here, and then the roof of the mouth. Go ahead and get sloppy, just make sure you don't hit your fur. And then this big pad here, hits inside of his hand. I'm not going to worry about like the tips of the fingers or anything. It doesn't look like a pad was modeled there. So I'm going to paint these up and we're going to highlight. I'm adding some white to my palette so we can increase the value of our first color here for a highlight. So coming in, I want to hit the bottom of the lip real quick. Grizzlies have like a real purpley interior mouth. Very scary. Looked at a few pictures. Wouldn't want to tango with them. I don't like bears either. We're going to hit the pad of the hands here. Again, just a quick highlight. Don't worry too much about getting super smooth. We're just trying to get ready for battle, right? Players might be killing this guy in like 2 rounds. You want to look good on the shelf. You want to look good for his fight. Let's take a little bit of this magenta, add it to our highlight color, and then add that to our tongue here. So you see, you don't need a lot of pink. You see how not pink that looks, but how pink it does look once it's in the mouth. Not worried about the teeth quite yet. Alright, and then I'm going to add just a little bit more white. And we'll bring some attention to the tongue with a couple highlights. Right there. And then just along the tip of the tongue or side of the tongue. And we got a nice mean tongue sticking out there. Now you can take some of this lighter pink tone if you want. Kind of hit around the base of the teeth. Show some gums, top of the teeth up here. And that's it. That's our pink purpley steps. For the teeth, I'm going to base coat them in khaki. So this is just a base layer. I want these teeth to look nice and dangerous. Around the base of the teeth, we're going to use Gilliman flesh to show that bone growth. So that's kind of like it's a nice reddish brown. We just want to put a brush stroke kind of at the base of the tooth and let the contrast do its work. Leave the tips of your fangs nice and bright. This is just to show that his teeth have been stained with blood for a few years. Make sure you get in there behind, just like when you're brushing. Alright, time to paint the eyes and claws. We're going to start with black. So base coat all those areas black. This guy's eyes are pretty small. So what we're doing is we're painting the pupil first and then using a white dot to show that his eyes are wet and shiny. Just a little black dot in there. Like that, I'm going to base coat the rest of these claws. Alright, now that Yogi has had his mani-pedi, we're going to take a little bit of white and just tiny dot at the back of the eye. Alright, this is to show that it's reflecting light. Alright, so you can see in there, and then tiny dot, because he's got really little beady eyes. Right there. So just a little dot on each side. That's all you need. And then we're going to boop the snoot. So he needs a little reflection to make his nose look like it's wet. So we're going to do one dot here, and then like a tinier dot right there. Alright, now that our bear is complete at a basic level, we're going to take our little A-case holder here, switch out our handhold, and get a base coat of our royal purple, the same color that we used to mix in with the magenta and the black for the pads and mouth. Thin down in the airbrush and a base coat over the whole area. This is our shadow tone. And again, if you don't have an airbrush, absolutely okay to go ahead and just base this with a hand brush, but you can see how fast I'm able to lay in this paint with an airbrush. So if you're a DM and you're painting lots of monsters, terrain, stuff like that, get you an airbrush. That'll save you tons of time. Alright, now that we got our purple coat on, time for some earth tone from Game Color. Game Color, have that thinned down 1 to 1 in our airbrush. I gotta turn my pressure way down. This is just to add back some of those natural tones. We don't want it looking too cartoony, but we do want that cool undertone for ice. I'm gonna come in here and kind of hit it from the bottom angle. You can already see we're getting some natural earth tones, some icy cold, like it's middle of winter. And the ground has got that cool winter sun hitting it. We're going to really ice up this rock. And we're going to add some snow and then some blood. And you see how that angle kind of changes so often. Now we're just going to hit the middle of this rock here. Leaving that cool light coming in from the side. Alright, time for a little bit of dry brush. I have my makeup brush here that we talked about earlier. Dry brush is an excellent way to do terrain because dry brush mimics that powderiness, that dustiness. Did you see? I'm just going to wipe off on my mat, not really a paper towel, and then come in, start adding. See how it adds that sort of natural streaky ice. And brush is coming in from the top and then raking down. I'm not going back and forth, just up, down, and out. Repeating. I'm even going to get it down here on what looks like these snow drifts, just to add a little bit of texture. Because we're going to go back and we're going to add some white to that, airbrushing it out. And I'm moving around the model, pulling away from the center with my dry brush. And then I want to go back and forth here on the center, and you see how that sort of naturalizes that. You get that brown showing through, you get that purple showing through. Now, this is all one load of the brush, right? Don't need a whole lot. These little icicles hanging down, I'm going to hit those a lot, from a lot of angles too. Because I want those to be bright, like ice, shining. Keep going. A little bit of that paint's reactivating, and that's fine. It's just adding more color, more tone, more story to the figure. What's a model without some teal? Taking our Bombay India ink teal here, hadn't thinned it out, coming in. I dropped my valve and broke it, so now I have to push more. We go real light. So real light with an unthinned paint means far away and real subtle pulls of the trigger. I want to focus here on this icicle, give it that nice cold blue teal color. Definitely in these little shadows. Cool them off even more. Alright, maybe just a little bit over here on this back end, just to balance out where our colors are. We don't want to super saturate one area and not put some of that color in another spot. Just so we have some interest from different angles, right? Alright, I think we're ready to glue. Alright, part of prepping these models was getting them on stands to make them easier to paint. And in doing so, I added pins to the bottom of the feet. A little bit of sticky tack here to help them adhere to the stand, which is just cork. So you can drill holes in this. You can even glue in. Just keep in mind that if you use glue, it's going to severely reduce the lifespan of your cork tops, which you might need to replace. So I have taken a drill bit, 1/16, and then I have 16 gauge floral wire here. And this, one of these feet is lower than the other. Always test fit. So this is how he stands on the base. I've taken, when I drilled these, the receiving holes out, I actually beveled the insert a little bit so that they'd fit a little looser, but go in all the same. You don't want them to bind and then not be able to get the whole foot down against the base. Which sometimes when you create a hole that's a perfect diameter, you create a high pressure chamber in there with the glue. So now we're just going to shove him down. He's got a little bit of gapping around the feet, but we're going to add some snow to the base to hide that. So I'm going to let that dry for a minute. While the glue's drying on the feet, I've gotten some tufts. Now these are kind of fall plainer tufts. They have that nice little red color in them. This is to just give it more of that Alaskan feel, where it's out in the wilderness, there's some grass that's poking through. Now this stuff does have some like sticky stuff on the bottom. That is not for adhering. You can use it for placement to see where you like to have these tufts, but I do recommend that you take some CA glue and you do glue these tufts down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Next thing, we're going to add some snow to the base, some actual snow flock from Woodland Scenics. Now this stuff lasts a long time. I've had this bottle a long time. You can tell by the dust that's on it. You want to flock over a tray so that you can gather up all your excess and dump it back into the container. To adhere that, we're going to take some super glue, apply it to the base. I'm going to go around the feet, any sort of these gaps where his foot doesn't really fit that well to the base. We're going to fill those in so he's standing in sort of a snow drift. And to apply your super glue, you can use a toothpick, you can use the backside of a brush, we use these metal pins that we have around the shop. I recommend when you do this, you do it small areas at a time. So I have just picked out this little section. I've put a little bit in the cap of my container here. I've added a little bit of glue to the top of the plants as well, so that they get a little bit of snow buildup on them. I did that just by kind of rubbing the tip of the applicator across the plants, and then just kind of tap off. We got some nice little snow drifts. Now you might need to apply a little bit more in some of the thicker areas, wait for it to settle or absorb into the glue, and just reapply. Once your glue is dry, you can take a matte varnish. There we go, matte varnish. We use Army Painter. We like it. It goes on smooth. I typically do it indoors. Be careful when you're matte varnishing. Always test it. Make sure you shake it. Don't store it in hot areas. Whole laundry list. I have another video about matte varnishing if you're interested in that. But a little trick that if you want little pieces of snow sticking to the fur, matte varnish and then hit it with a little bit of your flock, and then take an airbrush or air can or just blow on it, and little pieces of snow will stick into the fur. So now we're going to add some shadow with our indigo ink. I have the ink loaded up in my airbrush. We're going to make sure the back of the model is darker than the front. This creates visual interest to the front of a model and really gives some drama. So this is a light coat. We're not going super heavy. We're just adding some shadow, and it's also adding some nice color to the snow. There we go. Got a little bit of shadow, and see how much brighter the front of the base is. Creates a lot of visual interest. You can add shadow into some of the areas of the model as you get more brush control. It is a quick little addition, not typically something we do on lower level models. At this point we're almost done, but we're going to have some fun with a little bit of blood. Alright, first step to adding blood is we use the brush. So the reason we did our matte varnish before this, one, is to get the snow on there, and we want blood on our snow. Two, the blood effect is glossy. So we want that gloss, that shine, for the blood effect to come through. I'm not going super overboard with it. A little really goes a long way with this stuff. You know, maybe just a little bit, like on the tooth, like dripping down the chin there. Don't need it slathered all over his face. We don't want to knock out all that detail. Alright, the second trick is to take our airbrush and we can add some splatters with it. It's kind of hard to demonstrate on the camera, so I'm going to reset up the camera. Alright, so I've loaded up an older brush, and I'm going to take my airbrush and use it to spatter. I don't want him to fall over. I need 10 hands here. Don't need to hit my phone either. See the little speckles coming off? You can layer those up. They look a little bit more natural splattering like that than if you were to take your brush and just sort of layer them up. There we go. We got some blood in the snow. I'm going to continue to add some of that and show you the end result. And there we have it. Finished blood splatters and all. This will complete this model. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Please be sure to mash all those buttons on the YouTube. And as always, happy painting.